To create a state of fear and panic within the world's population sufficient to accomplish the unthinkable, the overthrow of national governments and the installation of a global empire, there must be more than just a deadly virus spreading across the planet. There is a psychological dimension that must be considered. In addition to widespread disease and death, there must be universal terror. Terror is a necessary precondition of populations willingly ceding their autonomy to a supreme government. Terror, used as a political weapon, is the very definition of terrorism. Bioterrorism, in turn, is the calculated release of a deadly pathogen for the express purpose of using terror as a political tool. While China's international release of the COVID-19 virus can understandably be considered an act of biological warfare by one state upon other states, it is more accurately described as an act of biological terrorism. The intent was not to initiate international warfare, but to create a global state of terror. A pandemic is frightening by itself, but the conspiracy, the worldwide radical left, needed to heighten collective fear to a panic or near-panic degree. They did this in several ways, beginning with declaring COVID-19 a pandemic. The World Health Organization is the internationally recognized organization entrusted with the official designation of a pandemic. The WHO's director, Dr. Tedros, did so in May of 2020.
WHO has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
The designation was not simply applied due to the spread and severity of the disease, but also for the inaction of the countries affected. The countries needed to be spurred to action. Fear was the motivation, and pandemic, that spur. The designation of pandemic was not the only scare tactic used by the left to bully the nations into submission to their will. Modeling was used to predict dire outcomes if the nations did not adhere to prescribed non-pharmaceutical interventions, that is, interventions employed in the absence of a vaccine. The model most influential in informing decision-makers in the US and UK was that generated by the Imperial College COVID-19 response team, led by Neil M. Ferguson. The model predicted that if no mitigation was performed, there would be 500,000 deaths in Great Britain and a whopping 2.2 million in the United States. The study authors believed that there were only two possible policy strategies to soften the blow of the epidemic: mitigation and suppression. Mitigation involved home isolation and quarantine, combined with social distancing of the elderly. Ferguson and his team felt that mitigation was insufficient and recommended suppression as the preferred policy option. Suppression, the more extreme strategy of the two, extended social distancing to the entire nation, and the addition of school and university closures. In the US, governors expanded closures to include businesses. Suppression, according to the study, needed to be maintained until there was a viable vaccine, which would take 18 months or more to become available. In short, shut down the entire countries of Great Britain and the US for a year and a half or more. The study forced governmental leaders in both nations to act and act specifically along the policy recommendations found in the study. Of course, none of this has come true. Models, when all is said and done, are not reality. They are projections based upon the assumptions and motivations of the modelers. We know now that Ferguson's model was dreadfully wrong, and by his own admission. As new data poured in, Ferguson drastically lowered his predicted deaths in the UK from 500,000 to 20,000.